Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. We are starting about 15 lines from the bottom of the page on Daf Mem Hey Amud Beis, and tonight we're learning Maseches Sukkah Daf Mem Vav. Scheduling note that I am out of town tomorrow and pre-recording and posting Tuesday unknown. I don't have a flight home yet, so once I schedule it and I know when it is, I will let all of you know. So we are starting again toward the bottom Mem Hey Amud Beis at the two dots. We had said in our Mishnah Kimaseu Bechol, it was referenced over there the Shita of Rav Yochanan ben Baroka, Amar Rav Huna my time of Rav Yochanan ben Baroka, who says that they were using, a specific type of branch and not arava, but they were using something from the palm tree. It says the Gemara, why did we say that? The chsiv kapos. That's what the pasuk says, and kapos is plural. Shnaim achas lelula ve'achas lemizbech, and both of them come from the same tree. So he held that when it came to arava, the arava that was going to be used was from the same exact source. It wasn't an arava mamish, but the mitzvah was going to be done with something else, with a part of the tree that was the palm tree. They said, what about that drasha? They said, no, amre kapas. See, when you look at the word, when you look at it, it doesn't have a vav. It was written chaser, and therefore they don't make this drasha, and therefore they could use an arava. So a regular arava. Reb Levi Amar, Reb Levi says katamar, that which we are going to use is going to be similar to a tamar, to a palm tree, to a date tree. Ma tamar zeh ein lo ela lev echad. Just like by the date tree, there's only one heart to the tree. So according to some of the Meforshim, what this means is that whereas by many trees, the sap is throughout the tree, even in the branches. That's not true by a palm tree, that the sap is only in the main trunk of the tree, and that's considered kilev echad. And just like how that is true by the tamar, af Yisrael ein lahem ela lev echad lehavim shebashamayim, and therefore we should be using something from that tree when we do the arava, because the Jews should be of such a stature where we only have lev echad lehavim shebashamayim. No soapbox, but we have a lot to do to be on that page where all of us have the same heart toward HaKadosh Baruch Hu. New Succah. The Gemara starts about 10 lines from the bottom. Amem Hamid Beis. I should say the Gemara continues. Amar Yehuda Mar Shmuel. Lulav Shiva, the Sukkah Yom Echad. This is talking about the brachos of. When it comes to the lulav, the halacha is that we make 7 brachos of lulav once every day. The Sukkah Yom Echad. But when it comes to Sukkah, we only make the bracha once over the entire Chag, my timer. So it says the Gemara as follows. The reason why, according to Rabbi Yehuda Mar Shmuel, according to Shmuel, the brachas are 7 brachos by lulav, and 1 by Sukkah is as follows. Lulav demifseke leilos miyamim. When it comes to lulav, the days and the nights are separated because at night there is no mitzvah of lulav. So then kol yom a mitzvah ba'ape nafshe. Then you have a different, distinct mitzvah every single day. And because that's true, you make a new bracha every day. However, last short line, sukkah de lo mifseke leilos miyamim. But when it comes to sukkah, there's no daytime versus nighttime in regards to sukkah. The mitzvah applies 24 hours a day. So because of that, take a look at this language here. Kulu shiva kechad yoma aricha damo. Wow. This is like language stolen from Rosh Hashanah, like the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, where we call it Yom Arichta. So the Gemara in the name of Shmuel is explaining that the reason why, according to this sheet of Shmuel, that we only make one bracha on the entire mitzvah of Sukkah. You walk into the Sukkah and Tes Vav of that month of Nisan, and you sit, of Tishrei, and you sit down and you make Kiddush and you make your Leishev. That's the only time you'll ever make such a bracha. Because it's a Yom Aricha, it is considered to be one extremely long day, which is 7 days long. 8 days long for those of us in Chutz La'aretz. That's Shita number 1. Shita number 2 of the first of the very long lines toward the bottom, Mem Hey Amud Beis, the Gemara says, Rabbi Bar Chana, and let's focus in here because we're going to be spending some time on his Shita. Rabbi Bar Chana quoted in the name of Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Sukkah Shiva, the exact opposite. Sukkah gets 7 brachos, Velulav Yom Echad, literally diametrically opposed shita. So now we have to understand that. My timer. Why does he say that Sukkah gets 7 days of brachos and lulav only gets 1? It says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom. Sukkah deoraisa Shiva. When it comes to Sukkah, which is a din deoraisa, so there we make 7 distinct brachos. Lulav derabanan sagila lebechad yoma. But when it comes to a din derabanan, so there 1 bracha is sufficient. I'm just saying off the page, that's very strange for our modern assumptions of halacha. We have many mitzvos derabanan that have brachos to them. The fact that 1 is a din deoraisa or 1 is a din derabanan should shift the number of brachos that we make in our modern parlance today is very strange in halacha. Now, obviously, this was in the very beginnings of the times of the Amoraim. They were navigating the sugyas. They were trying to figure out like what was the underpinnings of these types of halachos, and it wasn't necessarily always crystal clear to them. So this is the two approaches. The first approach is that of Shmuel, which is that we're looking at the continuity of the mitzvah. The lulav is broken by night, so therefore every day is a separate mitzvah. Mashen Ken Sukkah is one long 7-day stretch of 24 hours. That's approach number one. And approach number two is we're not looking at it from the continuity of the mitzvah, but rather the halachic status of whether or not it's a din d'oraisa or din d'rabbanan. Kiyasa Ravin, Amar Rav Yochanan, Kiyasa Ravin came and he said in the name of Rav Yochanan, and remember that Rabbi Bar Bar Chana also quoted Rav Yochanan, Echad zeh ve'echad zeh shiva. So he argued and said, no, everyone, both mitzvahs get 7. And that is, of course, how we pass it. It's also quoted that way in the Rambam and in Shulchan Aruch, but the 2 lines from the bottom, that line is Echad Zeh Echad Zeh Shiva, that we make a bracha every day. And really by the Sukkah, even more than that. It's every time we go into the Sukkah with a distinct reason to be in the Sukkah, a new meal. So we'll make one in the morning by lunch, and we'll make one at night for the next 2, then we make another leshed. Okay. Remember, we paskin in halacha that it's not for every moment. You have to eat a kazayis of something when you go in to kind of give it kind of more of a kvias, but in general, that is the case. Similar to tefillin, that every time we're going to talk about this too, that every time a person puts on tefillin, by and large, unless you're Sephardic, there are some exceptions there, that if an Ashkenaz person goes to the bathroom in the middle of Shacharis and they come back and they want to put on their tefillin again, they make a bracha, the Sephardim don't. So there's different shitas, but anyways, let's continue with the Gemara. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef was the 3rd century of Amoraim. All the previous Amoraim referenced were the 2nd and 1st centuries. So Amar Rav Yosef, Nekot de Rabba Bar Bar Chana biyodcha. You should hold on to the shita of Rabba Bar Bar Chana, because in my generation, he says, the Kulu Amorai Kaime Kavase B'Sukkah. Everyone seems to hold like him in regards to Sukkah, that a Sukkah gets 7 distinct blessings. Says the Gemara, that's very, very difficult to say that we should follow Rabbi Bar Bar Chana all the way to the bank. Why? Meisvei, turning to the top of Mem Vav Amud Aleph, the reason why it's difficult is because of the following brisa, a tosefta actually, that we saw in Maseches Brachos and in Psachim. Ha'osa lulav la'atzmo, a person makes their own lulav. Omer, they should make the bracha, Baruch she'echiyanu v'kiyamanu v'yanu lazman hazeh. That's when you're making your lulav. Natala latzeisbo, when you pick it up to be yotze, so then Omer, Baruch asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al natilas lulav. Of course, the omissions of Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam is assumed. It doesn't mean that we don't say it b'shem u'malchus. There are times in halacha that we don't say brachos b'shem u'malchus. One of the most famous ones is the bracha of Baruch Mechayim Esin. When you see someone after 12 months, so the Shulchan Aruch quotes a din, it's based on the Gemara, that's when you see someone after that amount of time, you're supposed to say, Baruch atah Hashem Mechayim Esin. So the poskim write that nowadays you're not allowed to say the bracha Mechayim Esin B'Shem U'Malchus, because we live in what the poskim call a dor chanufa. It's all fake, it's not real. So because it's not really authentic, you're not allowed to say Shem Hashem. We don't know that your heart is in it. So maybe there's an afkamina if you know your heart is in it. Let's say a person didn't see their spouse for 12 months and they had a longing for one another. Maybe they would say a taka, but there are times. But this is not meant to be the exclusion of Hashem's name. It's just a shortened version. So here, that's what he says here in the beginning of the brisa, that if you make your own lulav, you say shechianu. You pick it up to be yotze, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvah sav tzivanu tilas lulav. V'afal pi shebir chalav yom rishon, chozer mevarech kol shiva. And even if you made the bracha on day 1, you will go back and make again all of those, not all, but you'll make the bracha of al natilas lulav on the subsequent days. This is going to be question number 1 against Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, who said that you make only 1 bracha by lulav. Here it seems to be that you say 7. Next, ha'osa sukkah la'atzmo, a person who's building a sukkah, Omer, he should say, Baruch she'echiyanu v'kiyamanu v'giyanu v'lazman hazeh nichnas le'sheba. Once you sit down to fulfill the mitzvah, Omer, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu le'sheba sukkah v'kevan shebireich yom rishon shuveinu mevarich. And this is a double kasha in the shita Rabbi Bar Bar Chana. Rabbi Bar Bar Chana said that Sukkah gets 7 brachos and lulav gets 1. This brisa says the exact opposite, that the lulav gets 7 and Sukkah only gets 1. So it says the Gemara, kasha lulav alulav, kasha sukkah sukkah. A double question on Rabbi Bar Bar Chana. Really, the question's on Rav Yosef, who says that Rabbi Bar Bar Chana is right. How could Rav Yosef say that, knowing this brisa? So here's how Rav Yosef would have answered. We're about 10 lines down or so on Mem Vav Amud Aleph. I could explain the contrast between the shita of Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, who says that by a lulav, you make one bracha, and over here it seems to be that you make 7. Very, very easy distinction is that in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, we would have made a bracha every day. And that is what the Brisa on the top of Mem Vav Mud Aleph is talking about. However, Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, when he said you only make one bracha, that's not talking about that. That's talking about post-Korban. Ela Sukkah Kasha. How do we deal with the conflict between Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, who says that Sukkah gets 7 brachos, and this Brisa, which says that there's only one? So says the Gemara, really Tanaihi. It's not about a line in the sand of time. It's a mitzvah olamis. We don't we don't make a distinction in the mitzvah of Sukkah by pre-Chorban and post-Chorban. That's not a distinction to be made. So therefore, says the Gemara Tanoi. And where is our Mari Makom to learn about the difference between how many brachos we make by a Sukkah from the world of Tefillin? Says the Gemara Tanoi, quarter of the way down, the Tanya, the Brisa writes, Tefillin, kolzman shemanichan, nevarech aleihen, divrei Rebbe. Every time you put on a pair of tefillin, you need to make a new bracha. Okay? The Chachamim say the only time that we make a bracha on a pair of tefillin is at Shachris. Itmar, what do the Amoraim say about this brisa? Itmar, Abai Amar Hilchasa Kerebi. Abai says the halacha is like Rebbe, that every time you put on a pair of tefillin, you make a bracha. Rava Amar Hilchasa Kerabanan, and Rava was of the opinion that we follow the rabbis who say that it's only in Shachris that we make a bracha on tefillin. Amar Rav Mari, Bira de Bas Shmuel. Rav Mari was the son of the daughter of Shmuel. Chazina leila Rava de lo avid kishmaise. This previous quote of Machlokas Abai and Rava has to be a mistake. Why? Because I saw that Rava did not do what he said. Rava had just said a line ago that when it comes to the world of tefillin, that the halacha is like the Rabbanon, that we only make a bracha by Shachris Bilvad when it comes to tefillin. But I saw him acting differently. He would wake up in the morning and go to the bathroom. He'd leave the bathroom. He'd wash his hands. And he'd put on tefillin with a bracha. Normal, that's Shachris, right? It bothered me a little bit when I was learning this. Why didn't it say umevarech on his tefillin? But it doesn't. I don't think that there's room for mashmos there. I think my question was wrong. It's just saying that he actually made a bracha when he put on his tefillin. And when he had to go to the bathroom again, he'd go to the bathroom. He'd leave the bathroom and he'd wash his hands. Why don't
you do it today?
This we do today. Ashkenazim do this today. Ashkenazim do. The Sfardim don't make a new bracha on tefillin when they come out of the bathroom, but Ashkenazim do. So this is Rava, but the Gemara is bothered by the fact that Rava presented himself as a sheet of the Chachamim person, but the Chachamim said you only make it by Shachris Bilvad. Yet when he went to the bathroom after having already put on tefillin, he came out of the bathroom and washed Netilas Yadayim again, and he put on his tefillin with a bracha. So that doesn't work. That was problem number 1. And as well, we also paskin like Rebbe, and due to that, by extension, because we said there's a machlokas tanaim by Sukkah that's connected to the world of tefillin. So therefore, Mevorchin Kol Shiva, we would learn from Rebbe that just like every time you put on tefillin, you make a bracha. So too, every time you are in the Sukkah, you make a bracha. You'd make a minimum of 7. It's really more than 7 times. It just means every day you'd make a bracha. Amar Marzutra, almost halfway down, Mem Vav Menal. Amar Marzutra, Chazina le Rav Papa, Dechol Emas de Manach Tefillin Mevarech. Marzutra says that he saw that every time that Rav Papi would put on tefillin, he made a bracha. Rabbanan de Rav Ashi, Kol Emas de Mishamshe Behu Mevarche. That anytime he would move around his tefillin, he would also make a bracha. A very interesting idea. Some small changes in the girsa here, but nothing magical on the sides, just a mishamshu, just some different languages here. Amar Yehuda Mar Shmuel, mitzvahs lulav kol shiva. So he is now here. The Amoraim are chiming in. This was already, we saw the sheet of Shmuel that the mitzvah of lulav is all 7 days. Rabbi Shimon Levi Amar Yom Rishon mitzvahs lulav mikan ve'elach mitzvahs sekenim. He says, yeah, there is a mitzvah, but the first day is a din doraisa. Mikan ve'elach from here on out, days 2 to 7 is mitzvahs sekenim, is only a din derabanan. And then a very difficult line to understand, which the Gemara is going to be plagued by a little bit. Rav Yitzchak Amar Kol Yoma mitzvahs zekenim. Every day is going to be a mitzvah derabanan of lulav. Ve'afilu Yom Rishon. What do you mean ve'afilu Yom Rishon? The first day is not a din derabanan. What is Rabbi Yitzchak talking about? Asks the Gemara. Ve'akaim alanda Yom Rishon deraisa. How can you say that all of the days of lulav are dinei derabanan? Hare, we hold that we saw this already in this Masechta based on the Tanaim, based on drashas, that we hold that the first day of Lulav is a din d'oraisa. So says the Gemara, you're right. Ema bar miyom rishon. We should say, oh, no, he didn't mean all 7 days. He meant with the exception of the first day, all the other days are d'Rabbanan. Says the Gemara, okay, but then why is Rabbi Yitzchak talking? Ihachi, hainu de Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. That's exactly what Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, which is day 1 is d'oraisa, and days 2 through 7 are d'Rabbanan. What did you add? Ema, you're right, absolutely. This whole thing was a misquote. It just means to say the chen Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Similarly, that Rabbi Yitzchak held and agreed with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, but Rabbi Yitzchak was not trying to add anything. It was just being added as a source to support the sheet of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. And then says the Gemara, Va'af Rav Savar Kol Shiva Mitzvahs Lulav, that even Rav, namely not only Shmuel, but also Rav, was of the opinion that mitzvah of Lulav was 7 days. How do we know? Amar Rav Chia Bar Ashi Amar Rav Hamadlik Ner Shel Chanukah Tzarech Levarich. Wow, all the way out of left field. So what's our comparison now? Our comparison is that just like we have to light candles every night for Hanukkah and we make a bracha, so too by Lulav and Esrog, we have to make a bracha every day. And that's what Rav said, is that Hamadlik Ner Shel Chanukah Tzarech Levarich. Rav Yirmiyah Amar Haroeh Ner Shel Chanukah Tzarech Levarich. You're walking down the street, you see the beautiful lights in the windows. So the Gemara says you should be making a bracha on that. Mai mevarich. How many brachos do you make? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda Yom Rishon, on day 1, Hamadlik mevarich shalosh. Haroeh mevarich shtayim. That a person who's lighting would make 3 brachos, Shechiyanu and Alani and Lahadik Ner Shel Chanukah and Sha'asani. And the person who's roeh would just skip would just skip one of those brachos, which is the bracha of Lahadlik, and he'd say the other 2. Mikan ve'elech, starting on day 2, what would everybody do? Mikan ve'elech, last of the short lines, Madlik mevarach shtayim ve'aroeh mevarach achas. So there we see a distinction that they would say even fewer blessings because the bracha of Shechianu was removed after the first day. Umay mevarach. What is the bracha that one makes when they are actually lighting? Says the Gemara, Baruch Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner, either shel Chanukah or lahadlik ner Chanukah. As you can see, the word shel is in parentheses. Of course, we paskin that we say lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Ve'echan tzivanu. It's a famous kashya on all of the Dinei D'Rabbanan. How can you say v'tzivanu when it comes to Chanukah? Hare, all of this was post Churban. We did not have an Anshe Knesses Agdola to give us a formal din d'Rabbanan that you get to. So there were Tanaim Oris that were present for this. It says the Lo Sasur. The pasuk says Lo Sasur min hadavar she'agidu l'chaya minus mo, that you're not allowed to reject what the Chachamim say, because the Chachamim instituted that there should be Chanukah. So therefore, it wasn't obviously totally post-Churban, but it was with the destruction, part of the destruction of the Churban. So therefore, one is that is sufficient enough to say that tzivanu, that tzivui is to follow the Chachamim. So that's what lo sasur means. Rav Nachman gives another answer. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Sha'al Avicha v'Yagedcha. Ask your father, and he will tell you a similar type of answer, but from a different pasuk. Skip the parentheses. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Masni LaBehedja. We had said that the shita of Rav was that kol shiva mitzvahs lulav. Here, 4 lines down in the wide lines Memvav and Aleph, we have an explicit statement in this about Rav. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said this exactly like it sounds. Amar Rav kol shiva mitzvahs lulav. Very clear. So Rav holds of this opinion as well, and of course, halacha l'maisa, we are of the opinion that we say a bracha every time we take lulav and esrog, once each day. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbi says Succah la'atzmo. If a person makes a sukkah for themselves, as we said, Omer Baruch Shechianu, and we as well said that Nichnas Leishei ba Omer Baruch Asher Kiddushana, that when you're going to sit down to do the mitzvah, that you make the bracha of Leishei ba Sukkah. Haisa Asuya ve'omedes. Let's say that the sukkah was already built. So what happens to the Shechianu? Im yachol lechadesh ba davar mevarich. If you could do something that's unique, that adds to the sukkah, you should make a bracha of shechianu. Imlav, if not, then then when you sit down to actually do the mitzvah, then mevarach shtayim, then you can make another bracha. It's interesting that you're not only making a bracha on the SES sukkah. There's obviously the chidushim of the day and the uniqueness of the day that allow us to make a shechianu. These are the shilas in poskim. If a woman makes a shechianu during hadlakas neiros, and then there's a shechianu during kiddush, and she says amen, it might be a hefsek, and she has to make her own bracha for the borei priagafa to drink the wine. Good shilas. It says the Gemara that if imlav, if you're not able to make a chiddush in the sukkah, then the cheshei kanes leishei ba mevarach shtayim. Amar Rav Ashi chazina leila Rav Kahana. This is very halacha l'maisa. Rav Ashi says, I saw Rav Kahana did the following. The Ka'amar Luhu Kulhu, he said all of the brachos, Akasa de Kiddusha, on the cup of Kiddush. And that has become, of course, our custom. That we say the Shechianu, we say the Leishev, all of it is done together over a cup of wine. Tana Rabbanan, this is unbelievable. Hayu lefan of mitzvos harbe. Let's say you're about to just knock off 10 mitzvos in a row.
I don't understand the first, how do you say Shechianu on making the sukkah if you can't make it on Yom Tov and it's not a mitzvah until it's Yom Tov?
Why? What's the problem? Why can't you make a Shechianu?
Hmm.
Why can't you make a Shechianu?
You can't build it, I mean, it's not a mitzvah to have it until it's Yom Tov, and you can't make it.
You're not saying Asher Kiddush on mitzvah savet sivan. So seemingly the line of reasoning in the Gemara, because you have to make the lulav before Yontif, right? Seemingly the chiddush of making the lulav and esrog and building the sukkah is worthy of a shechianu. No different than eating a star fruit once every 13 months. Just it's an out of the blue experience.
That's an instantaneous.
Correct. I'm asking, but his question begs an answer because it's not on the day of the holiday. You have to go back. You have to fall back.
On the 14th.
Correct. It's nothing but a hut. But there has to be, of course, it's me'ein the mitzvah. Maybe this is the bigger picture of what is hechsher mitzvah and halacha. That could be as well. We know that sometimes hechsher mitzvah, we saw this. We saw the sheet on the brisa. The hechsher mitzvah is that according to some, if you don't have a lulav, you're allowed to cut it off of a tree, even on Yontif. That's an unbelievable. That's for hechsher mitzvah.
Possible answer is that we don't do it.
Whoa, that's how we pass. That's how we pass. Yeah, but
The way you just said it, like our custom, it's like, it's theoretically, somebody did it this way.
right. The way I didn't mean it in a halachic, in a psak way. It could just be that I'm wrong, but I didn't mean it in a halachic way. We do not do this. We do not make a shechianu when we make a sukkah.
Question is that valid?
Yeah, it might well be. It might well be. Yeah, the question begs a real answer. It's true. Not what I'm saying. So it says the Gemara as follows. Tana Rabbanan, we're about 9 lines or so from the bottom of Mem Vav Amud Aleph. Amar Rav Ashi, nope, that's not right. Tana Rabbanan. Hayu lefan of mitzvos harbe. A person is about to do a number of mitzvos at the same time. Omer, what should he say? Baruch Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav etzivanu al ha-mitzvos. And then you take your checklist, you build the sukkah, you do a bris, you just knock them all off at one time. Put on a pair of tzitzis, a talis, tefillin. It's unbelievable. We don't make that many brachos on the Seder. You're such a lit fuck, Joe. I didn't know that. Unbelievable. But that's the shita of the Tana Kama, one that we don't agree with. Obviously, no one's ever made this bracha ever before. Every bracha, every mitzvah gets its own bracha. Rav Yehuda Omer mevarach al kol achas ve'achas bifnei atzma. Nothing to talk about. We make a bracha on every mitzvah. This comes up even within any one mitzvah. The poskim discuss this when a mole is doing a bris for twins. It's a big shaila. So if you have 2 boys in the room, you're not allowed to separate the brachos anymore. Both babies who are about to be mal are in the room. You're not allowed to make 2 brachos. You make one set of brachos, baby. No bracha in between. So the custom, according to many poskim, is to keep the younger child outside of the room. You make the brachas on the older kid, do the bris, have a hefsek between the 2. Usually people sing a malach hagoel. That's what we did with my boys. And then they would bring in the next kid and a fresh set of brachos. And I was in Eretz Yisrael, Shechianu, I had to get a new hat. The first bracha of Shechianu was on the first baby's bris. The second Shechianu was on the baby's bris, but tonight that I had a garment just in case that second bracha couldn't be made. There's like a lot of loopholes. So we're so machmir that we even will do the same mitzvah twice in a row and make the same bracha twice in a row. But according to that's Rabbi Yehuda, but according to the Tana Kama, that we would say, Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvos savet tzivanu al ha-mitzvos. Let's understand the shita that we paskin like. Amar Reb Zera v'teim Reb Chanina bar Papa. Hilchasak Rabbi Yehuda, we paskin, as we know, like Rabbi Yehuda. My time is Rabbi Yehuda. Why does he hold what he holds? He says because it's based on the pasuk T'chsi Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. What does the pasuk mean? We don't give brachos to HaKadosh Baruch Hu at night. That's ridiculous. And during every day, at every opportunity, give a bracha. And therefore we do that. And then only because we've been talking about this person, because this doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about directly, but because we were talking about this person, that when it comes to Hashem, He is very different than a flesh and blood king. How so? Midas basar v'dam, a person, a human being with the limited mental faculties that we have, kli reikon. If you have an empty kli, then we assume machzik. We assume that which is empty can hold something. But malay, once it's been filled up, eino machzik. Once it's been filled up, you're done. It's full. You can't put any more soup in the container. It's done. Aval midas HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no, the other way. Malay machzik, if a person has tried to fill up their brain with Torah, then machzik, then it will be fit for more Torah. However, rekan eino machzik, but if you don't really try so hard and your brain is not filling up with material, so then eino machzik shene'emar v'haya im shamoa tishma. If you listen, then you'll be able to learn more. And that's the drasha, im shamoa tishma, im lav lo tishma. That's the diuk in the pasuk, im shamoa tishma, that if you're willing to learn, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bless you to add more to the kli, which may feel full to you. My brain is stretched. I feel like I've learned too much, quote unquote, and therefore I can't learn anymore. No, that's not the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu works. If you listen to the old stuff, you'll be able to learn the new stuff as well. In contrast, that if you turn your heart away, then you will not be able to learn. Good musar, but not relevant to the discussions of our Gemara about Sukkah. We're on Mem Vav Amud Beis, 6 lines down at the 2 dots. Miyad Tinokos, this very strange discussion that took place in our Mishnah, where the Gedolim would swipe out. They were like, causing the fumble. They would swipe out the esrog and bore priha ate and just eat it like an apple. Okay. Amar Rav Yochanan esrog b'shvi aser b'shmini mutter. Rav Yochanan was of the opinion that an esrog cannot be eaten on the 7th day, but can be eaten on the 8th. Sukkah afilu b'shmini asur, and a sukkah is not allowed even on the 8th day. Reish Lakish, in sharp contrast to Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish amar esrog afilu b'shvi nami mutter. Reish Lakish was of the opinion that you could even eat an esrog on the 7th day. The Ma'ika Miflageh. When we're discussing the 7th day, where Rabbi Yochanan says that an esrog on the 7th is asur, and Reish Lakish says that an esrog on the 7th is mutter, what are they arguing about? So says the Gemara, they're arguing about the general basic rules of muktzah. Says the Gemara, Mar Savar lemitzvasa is katzoi, that when we say that this cannot be used, it only cannot be used in as much as it has a separate obligation for a mitzvah. But once you finish that final mitzvah for the final time, the second that happens, even if it's the middle of the day on Yontif, all of a sudden it becomes mutter. That's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is katzoi. That's the shita of Reish Lakish, that even b'shvi it's mutter. Umar Savar lekule yoma is katzoi. No, regular rules of muksa. Whatever the status of that item was during Bein Hashmashos, that's the status the whole day. So on the 7th day, when you're about to do your final mitzvah of lulav and esrog, Rav Yochanan says, I know you finished the mitzvah, but you can't eat it now. It's muksa still. You can't eat it for that purpose. That's not allowed. That's the machlokas. Esvei, so the Gemara says we have a kasha. Esvei Reish Lakish to Rav Yochanan. This brisa is not going to work for Rav Yochanan. Not a brisa, it's our Mishnah. What does our Mishnah say? Miyad tinokos shomtenes lulaven ba'ochlen esrogen. We said that the adults were taking the food from the children, the esrogen. My lab, hu adin legdolim, that we should say that you can even eat. It seems, it says Reish Lakish, that maybe from our Mishnah it implies that you can even eat the esrog of a gadol, which should be a kasha on Rav Yochanan, who says that it's not mutter to eat that until the next day. How could you eat it on this day? Our Mishnah seems to be a kasha on Rav Yochanan. Says the Gemara, lo, tinokos dafka. That's not correct. It was only talking about children. And Ika de Amre, really, some say that this question was flipped. It wasn't a question from Reish Lakish to Rav Yochanan, but rather Esvei, Rav Yochanan to Reish Lakish. What was the kasha on Rav Yochanan to Reish Lakish? Miyad hatinokos shomtenes ulaven v'ochlen esrogein. That's what we saw in our Mishnah. That they used to take the esrogim away. Tinokos in gedolim lo. It seems that only children are allowed, but gedolim are not allowed. That implies that for a gadol, that his esrog is muktzah on the 7th day, and that's a kasha on Reish Lakish. Says the Gemara, no. Hu adin de'afilu gedolim, that really even by gedolim it would be aser. The high diktani tinoko, that it would be mutter. That it would be mutter to eat the esrog. The high diktani tinokos. Or chadamil saktani, it was just the way of speaking at that time, that when people referred to this sugya, it was talking about children's esrogim, but all of them would be mutter. We're about a third of the way down Mem Vav Amud Beis. We're going to be going until about 4 lines until the end of the page. Amar le Rav Papa le Abaye le Rabbi Yochanan. According to Rabbi Yochanan, my shna sukkah, my shna esrog. Why did Rabbi Yochanan distinguish between a sukkah and an esrog? The sukkah is, he said that the sukkah is going to be asr even on the 8th day, and that it would be asr on the 8th day, and that a lulav and an esrog would still be asr on the 7th day. Why distinguish? So he says as follows: Amar le sukkah dechaz yel bein hashmashos. Sukkah is still fitting that toward the end of the 7th day, going into the 8th, the Isrami Le'Sudasa, that if you wanted to eat something, but it was after Shkia, so then Boi Mesa Begavo, Mechal Begavo, you have no choice. It's Bein Hashmashos. You're obligated to eat in the Sukkah during Bein Hashmashos, bridging the 7th day to the 8th day. And since that's true, is Katsoi leBein Hashmashos. Umigud is Katsoi leBein Hashmashos, is Katsoi lekol Yoma Deshmini. No choice. So when it comes to Sukkah, if a person wants to eat a meal on the 7th day, bridging into the 8th, he has to eat that meal during Bein Hashmashos in a Sukkah. And because he did that, that shows you that during that Bein Hashmashos, that the Sukkah is katsoi, that it's muksa for the mitzvah. And therefore, even on the 8th day, it's not mutter. However, esrog, to lo chazi the Bein Hashmashos. And esrog has no shaychus by Bein Hashmashos under the best of circumstances, because it's a mitzvah saseh shazman gram, it's only b'yom and abalayla. And therefore, lo is katsoi the Bein Hashmashos, all of that was based on the shita of Rabbi Yochanan. V'levi Amar esrog afilu b'shmini aser. He takes it even further. He says even on the 8th day, the lulav, the esrog is not allowed. The avuha de Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, Amar esrog b'shvi aser b'shmini mutter. He argued, and then the two of them flipped their shitas. Avuha de Shmuel and Levi changed their own shitas on one another. They just swapped. Kam avua de Shmuel b'shitzei de Levi, kam Reb Zera b'shitzei de avua de Shmuel. The Amar Reb Zera, the esrog, shenifsala asr la'ochla kol shila. So we see that Reb Zera started following the opinion of avua de Shmuel after he swapped his shita. Amar Reb Zera, this is a very important halacha, one that I've referenced a number of times in this Masechta already. Here it is, black on white, 2/3 of the way down. Mem vav med aleph. Amar Reb Zera, lo likni inish hoshana lianuka b'yom tavakam. One should not give over or give as a kinyan. One should not give over their lulav and esrog to a child on the first day of Yantif. Because on that first day of Yantif, we know that there is a din of lachem. And here's the problem with children. My taima, di yanuka mikna kani. They are in fact capable, halachically, of receiving a kinyan. However, aknuye lo makne, but they're incapable of creating a transaction outbound, where they are makna something to you, and therefore the ishtakach the kanafik belulav she'eno shelo. And if you then pick up the lulav that you gave to your child, that you gave to him as a kinyan, thinking that you wanted him to be yotzei because there's a din of lachem, you gave it to him with a full heart. You're stuck. You can't use that lulav anymore. If that happens halacha l'maisa, you have to go to one of your friends and matan almanas lahachsher. You have to get an adult. The child can't do matan almanas lahachsher. They can't be makna anything to anybody. They're like a black hole in many ways. But halachically speaking, if you give them the lulav, done. That lulav is done for. There's nothing that they can do anymore. V'amar Reb Zera, this is parent musar. Lo lema inish lianuka di yehivna lachmidi. Don't tell a child you're going to give them something, and then the lo yahivle, and then you don't end up giving it to them. You always got to follow through with kids. Mishum de asi leag mure. Maybe they'll learn from you shikra, that it's okay to lie. Yeah, I'll give you a treat if you behave nicely. And then they behave nicely and you don't give them anything, you're teaching them that you're a liar and that they can lie. Shenemar limdu l'shonam dvar sheker. Ubeplukta de Rabbi Yochanan and Rav Shimon ben Lakish, where we started out at the top of this page at the 2 dots in regards to when an esrog is aser, where Rabbi Yochanan was of the opinion that an esrog b'shvi is aser, and Reish Lakish says that on b'shvi it's mutter. So back to where we are, 12 lines or so from the bottom, in that machlokes, ubeplukta de Rabbi Yochanan and Rav Shimon ben Lakish de itmar hifri shiva esrogim l'shiva yamim. How would this play out in the following case scenario? Let's say that you had 7 esrogim, 1 per day. Omar Rav. According to Rav, you have the day 1 esrog and the day 2 esrog and the day 3 esrog and 4, 5, 6, 7. So one day you take an esrog and you're yotzei with it, and now you have tomorrow's esrog already. You could take a bite out of this one like an apple. Bori priha eitz, all is fine and well. You don't have to wait la'altar. But Rav Asi Amar no. You have to finish the day. This sounds very similar to the machlokas we had about muksa at the top of the page. What is this machlokas between Rav and Rav Asi in regards to whether or not one is allowed to eat an esrog immediately after they finish the mitzvah on a particular day, knowing full well that they have other esrogim for the future? This says the Gemara, Mar savar lemitzvasa is katzoy. The only reason why it's muksa is for its mitzvah. And once the mitzvah is done, then it is no longer muksa and you can eat it, no problem. That's the shita of Rav. Umar savar l'kula yoma is katzai. No, it's the whole entire day. It's a whole entire day. So now we see the machlokes at the top of the page of Rav Yochanan and Rav Shimon ben Lakish is the same as Rav and Ravasi, and it seems to have carried for these. They were a very similar generation. They overlapped quite heavily, these four Amorai. Okay, the Anan de Islan Trei Yomi. For those of us who live in Chutz La'aretz and we have 2 days, Heichi Avdinan, what should we do? Really, what the Gemara is asking is we're trying to apply this question of the esrog to those who are bnei Chutz La'aretz. We know that there's a big sif in Shulchan Aruch about what bnei Chutz La'aretz should do in Eretz Yisrael and what bnei Eretz Yisrael should do in Chutz La'aretz. Big shilas. Ask your local Orthodox rabbi about how to behave, tefillin, and all the other shilas that come up. Fine. The Anan the Islan Trei Yomi, what should we do? So Amar Abaye Shmini Safek Shvi Aser. The 8th day, because of Sveika de Yoma, because of our concerns at that time of when actual Kriya de Yarcha was, of when the month actually started, and therefore which day is Yontif and which day is not, because we have a suffix, so therefore Aser, we would treat the 8th day like the 7th day. But to Shi, the 9th day, suffix Shmini, that's fine. That level of suffix is mutter. Reimar Amar, Afilu Shmini suffix Shvi mutter. He was a big mekil. Reimar was of the opinion that on the 8th day, which was a suffix of the 7th day, that it would be mutter. The Surah Abdekim Mereimar, and in Surah they actually follow the lenient sheet of Mereimar. Rav Shisha Bered Rav Idi Avid Ke'abaye V'Hilchasa Ke'abaye. But we paskin l'chumra that we paskin like Abaye that when we have a suffix, the suffix is full throttle, and we would not be lenient on day 7. We would be strict. We're going to be stopping here 4 lines from the bottom of Menvav Medbeis. Tomorrow, Mir Hashem, I will post in our chat a link. I'll just let you know when it's uploaded both to YouTube and to Apple Podcasts. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
What do you mean?